Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, everybody. For this week's video, I am going to create a coupler height check station for one of my clients. Well, actually, I'm going to build two of them because I have two clients in need of them. It's very easy to make and well worth the time investment because it will make checking the height of couplers on your railroad a lot simpler and probably a lot quicker as well, which is always going to be a good thing. Who wants to spend their modelling time checking coupler heights when they could do more interesting stuff? So anyway, without further ado, let's just turn the camera around and get busy. Well, here are the components for the coupler height check stations that I'm going to be building. Obviously we start off with the KD coupler height gauge. I've assembled this one, I still have three more in the packets. We need some flex track, Atlas re-railers, KD coupler trip pin pliers, and spacer washers of two different thicknesses. I had to get some really thin screws to attach the gauges down to the base. I hope these are thin enough. If not, I'm going to have to drill that out. I won't know that until I get that far. Here I have the base, the bases. This is just offcuts of 3/4 inch plywood, 8 inches wide, 3 feet long, which are left over from a shelving project in my basement. And then I'm going to have some sticks of wood. These are just 1x1 clear pine. I could have used strips of plywood, but I had those available, so I just cut those. And the idea being that I put those, whatever the right distance apart is, with some padding to allow cars to be placed upside down without damaging them. There's nothing magical about any of these dimensions. I'm just using up whatever I had left over from previous projects. So let me just get on with the assembly and I'll be right back. Well, what I've done is cut my flex track into 12-inch pieces, which is why I had one full yard and an offcut earlier. I've attached one piece to the end of each of the re-railers, and I've elected to solder the rail joiners just so I don't have problems with the rail sliding out. And then I'm going to use this Crafter's Pick Ultimate Glue, which I get from Hobby Lobby, to glue the track down to the base. I'm not going to put any foam roadbed under here because I'm not trying to sound deaden it or anything like that. But I am going to use this foam roadbed material, which you've seen in a previous video, to line the trough for placing the cars upside down. And by measuring this box car and the thickness of the foam rubber, I came up with a width of about 45mm for that trough. As you can probably see, I've just attached each piece with 2 drywall screws. Well, I've cut a piece of this roadbed material 6 inches wide, which is a bit wider than I need it, but I will just trim it off later. I've already done an experiment with a test piece. Let's get the backing off. Start by placing it on the edge, making sure it lines up at both ends. Push it down. I'm going to use my straight edge to press it firmly against the side of the trough. And then the bottom. And then the other side. And lastly the top of the second side. Now I know from my previous experiments that this sticks fairly well. If it tends to spring up at the edge, I will glue it and weight it, but I think that should be okay. And now I'm just going to cut this off flush. That is one done. Now you can put freight or passenger cars upside down in that trough with less tendency to damage details than if you put them on a hard surface. And for gluing down the track, it's just exactly the same procedure as you've seen me do on layout builds. I start by drawing a line, which in this case is the end of the ties because it's the easiest one to line up against. And I'm just going to put Crafter's Pick down under both rails. just line it up with my line. Straight edge against the ties. And I'm just going to weight it. I don't have a full case of Mountain Dew at my disposal right now, so I'm just going to use these Fastrax filing guides. And then once that glue has had time to set up, I will come back and install a couple of height gauges. So don't go away, I'll check in with you again later. Well, I've now glued the track down on both setups and given it a little bit of time to go hard, so I can remove the weights, and I can now install a couple of height gauges at each end. As the height gauge comes, it's a one-piece metal casting. There's a number 5 KD coupler which has to be installed, and there's a small screw that goes in there and holds it in place. I already assembled this one earlier, so now I'm just going to attach it. Now these number 4 screws, they do go through. Now I'm just going to put one at each end. Remove that so it's near the center of the camera frame. I've got to make sure that it is properly seated over the track and that the screw is going to go down between the ties. These are 1 inch by number 4 wood screws. And now I'm going to keep going until it's tight but doesn't distort the track, and that will stay there. And then, as you can see, we have the re-railer in the middle, so we can just put the car, re-rail it that way, run it, and that is telling me that that coupler is just about perfect. And with only one gauge, I would now have to turn the car around and do the same thing. But with a second gauge at the other end, it'll just be a case of lifting it off like that and running it down the track. And if I find I need adjustment, there are a few fibre washers that come with it. Just put the car upside down in the cradle and make the adjustments. Well, I've now installed the couple of height gauges on each end of both setups. One more thing I'm going to do before I call this project finished is to turn it over, and I'm going to add some scraps of this same foam rubber roadbed to the 4 corners, just in case the client wants to work on his dining room table without scratching it. And that will now protect any surface he decides to work on. Well, that's all for this video. I hope it was useful and informative. This design is a slight improvement on what I use on my own layout, so I'm definitely going to get some more parts and make another one for myself. I was considering adding it to my online store, but I don't think I'm going to do that because I would much rather encourage my viewers to build it for themselves, since it's not particularly difficult. If you have any questions on how to do any particular step or where to obtain the materials from, feel free to leave comments down below and I will do my best to answer them, or more than likely I will just answer them in the description as the questions come in. So even if you don't receive a personal reply from me, please read the description to see if I've already answered your question. And with that, I will sign off here and hope to see you again next week. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.